We begin the day with a leak lockdown at the White House that may be too little, too late. Congressional leaders apparently have had enough. Monday's embarrassing resignation of National Security Advisor Michael Flynn, suggesting an unchecked and unmeasured reach of Russian influence inside the Oval Office. Well, top Republican senators are calling for a probe into ties between U.S. President Trump and Russia, and they want Mr. Flynn to testify. Now, it was about a month ago when the U.S. Attorney General reportedly alerted the White House that the Russians could have compromising information about Mr. Flynn. Well, that Attorney General was fired a few weeks later. Mr. Flynn remained untouched. And as recently as last Friday, the U.S. president claimed he knew nothing about a Flynn-Russia connection.
Mr. President, what do you make of reports that General Flynn had conversations with the Russians about sanctions before you were sworn in?
I don't know about it. I haven't seen it. What report is that?
I haven't seen it. Reporting that he talked to the ambassador to Russia before you were inaugurated about sanctions, maybe trying to...
I haven't seen that. I'll look at that.
Well, the White House has been unusually restrained in its reaction to the Flynn resignation, and this could quickly become an existential crisis for an administration that's not even 1 month old. In addition to North Korea's latest missile test, there are reports tonight that Russia has deployed a new cruise missile in blatant violation of an arms control treaty. How can the U.S. president respond? Our coverage begins with the man who called it quits and called an administration into question.
Michael Flynn's tenure as National Security Advisor was a short one. His month in office was dogged by allegations he discussed lifting U.S. sanctions on Moscow with Russian Ambassador Sergei Kislyak before the Trump administration took office, an action that could have violated U.S. law. At the time, Flynn was a private citizen, and American law expressly forbids private citizens from engaging in diplomacy in place of government officials. For weeks, Flynn denied the allegations, but the Washington Post added fuel to the fire when it confirmed the conversation had taken place. In his resignation letter, Flynn now admits he failed to inform key officials, including U.S. Vice President Mike Pence, that he had discussed lifting sanctions on Russia with officials in Moscow. The U.S. imposed sanctions on Russia over its 2014 annexation of the Crimean Peninsula. For now, the Kremlin is reserving comment over Flynn's resignation.
We don't want to make any comment. This is an internal matter for the Americans. It's an internal matter of President Trump's administration.
Following Flynn's resignation, President Trump appointed Keith Kellogg as acting National Security Advisor. The retired Army Lieutenant General will advise the president until a permanent replacement can be found.
Well, joining me here at the big table is Tyson Barker. Tyson served as an advisor at the U.S. State Department during the Obama administration. He's an expert on foreign policy affairs, especially transatlantic, and he's now with the Aspen Institute here in Berlin. Tyson, it's good to have you on the show.
Thanks.
What is your take on what we're seeing right now? Does this stop or begin with Flynn?
I think that we're starting to see the ribbon be pulled a little bit. We're seeing a crisis in the national security establishment in the White House on 3 levels. One is Flynn's discussion of sanctions with Kislyak was in blatant violation of the Logan Act, which is a law that states that you cannot negotiate while there's an administration in place. So they were already having live negotiations. The second is the lie to the vice president about whether or not this discussion took place, which was proven to be wrong by the fact that the tape was recorded by the NSA. And the third is just a crisis of competence, which is something that we see across the board on national security right now in this administration. The truth is that there have been numbers of leaks, numbers of contradictory statements. We have even today on the White House website different EOs that are different from the official EOs that were signed being published.
Executive orders.
Executive orders, exactly. So we see crises on multiple levels.
So you don't think there's malfeasance at play here as much as there is just, what, gross incompetence?
Well, Benjamin Wittes put it best. He said that this administration right now is characterized by malevolence, tempered by incompetence. And I think that that's something that we're seeing right now. Clearly, there was an agenda, let's put it in the best of terms, to improve relations with Vladimir Putin and the Kremlin to an extent that would seem outside the normal scope of foreign policy in the United States. That means putting things on the table like NATO, like the European project, like the sanctity of U.S. elections.
Right.
The problem is that they're running against a number of crises at the same time. It's like they're trying to build a plane while flying it.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it. Let's take a listen to what Sean Spicer said earlier today about how much the president knew. Take a listen.
The issue here was that the president got to the point where General Flynn's relationship, misleading the vice president and others, or the possibility that he had forgotten critical details of this important conversation, had created a critical mass and an unsustainable situation. That's why the president decided to ask for his resignation, and he got it.
Okay, he got it. What Mr. Spicer does not tell us is when the president decided, I can't trust this man anymore. And we still don't know, according to the White House, exactly when the president was informed about what Flynn had discussed with the Russian ambassador.
So these are forensics that are going to need to be dealt with in very great detail. And that means not only investigations, perhaps by the Justice Department, and perhaps also cases within the judiciary, but also in Congress. And what we're already seeing is the Senate, including top Senate Republicans, not just Lindsey Graham and John McCain, who are the traditional Russia hawks, but also John Cornyn, and up to, in just recently, Mitch McConnell, saying that it is time to really look into every single sequencing of events around this incident.
You brought up the Logan Act, which is interesting. Let's just pull that up if we can and show our viewers what the Logan Act says. It says any citizen of the United States without authority of the United States with intent to, with intent to influence any foreign government to defeat the measures of the U.S. shall be fined or imprisoned. You're saying that under the Logan Act, Michael Flynn could maybe actually be prosecuted. But if all of this is true, and this happened before Trump took office, and Trump knew what was going on, could the U.S. president also be prosecuted under the Logan Act?
Well, sometimes, I mean, this is something for courts to really take into consideration, and obviously the judiciary itself, or the Justice Department. You know, the important thing right now is to really get all the forensics on the table. We have several independent institutions, Congress, the courts, and frankly, the media and civil society, which are all going to be trying to unpack each single incident that occurred, each sequence, each beat by beat, to see what is prosecutable and what isn't. Well,
what about the Justice Department? The Justice Department, you know, the Attorney General who was fired, saying that that they informed the White House about a month ago about Mr. Flynn. And we're hearing today that the White House found out, I think, January, what was it, 26th. Now, those two conflict, but there has to be someone telling the truth. So
this is the fog of information warfare, if you will. I mean, right now, what we have to do, again, is take a step back and look at this, you know, with all these institutions that have the kind of prosecutorial or investigative authority to do so, and really put together the pieces. This is like building a ship in a bottle. Of course, you're going to hear different stories from different institutions and different personalities involved in these cases. But really, I mean, even if we're talking about the immediate impact, what's happening right now, if you look at the White House, you know, people used to talk about a team of rivals, but what we really have are rival teams. I mean, we have...
In the White House.
In the White House itself, in the national security establishment. So how is this going to go forward and shore up the credibility of the United States with your international partners? That's a big question.
It's a big question, especially when we're dealing with North Korea, possibly also Russia with a new cruise missiles. Michael Flynn, let me just ask you, if he does testify before Congress, and if he decides that it was someone in the White House who leaked and who is responsible for his demise, could he be the one who brings a house of cards tumbling down?
Well, I think that, first of all, the testimony will probably occur first of all, an investigation has to take place. And second of all, you have to build a standing, essentially, to have hearings, to have him come testify, probably in a classified setting, because we're dealing with very sensitive information. Okay. That said, he has been a part of the campaign since the beginning.
Right.
So I think he's pretty integral to the entire ethos of national security thinking that has been at the core of the Trump campaign and the early administration.
All right. Tyson Barker with the Aspen Institute. I think we'll have you back on the show because I think this story is going to have some long legs. Thank you very much.
Thank you.